Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte. Guys, we are at the 25% of the way mark through the 2021 NHL season, so it's time for our first buyers and sellers for the 2021 NHL trade deadline, April 12th, and we're going to be taking a look at our first buyers and sellers in this video. If you guys like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL, more videos like this, guys, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. And let's take a look at my buyers and sellers for the 2021 NHL season. So, it is time. We are doing a segment this year. We're going to do it probably 3 times. One, which is right now, 25% of the way through the season. A second time, probably halfway through the season, around game, 30, 35. And we'll probably do another one right before the NHL trade deadline, another buyers and sellers. So basically, this is just a status of the franchises around the league. Where do teams sit? Who's going to be buying, selling, and who is going to stay neutral at this year's trade deadline? Now, the goal is to have as many sellers as possible, because at the end of the day, the more sellers you have, the more guys that will be available for trade come trade deadline day, which is what we like, right? We want to see more action. Now, the problem is, because of the parity in recent NHL seasons, we've seen teams say, you know what, we're going to hold on to our guys, even if we're close in the chase, because we could go on a run and we make the playoffs, and then less deals get made. But looking at a lot of teams right now, we could be in store for a pretty interesting trade deadline. Now, obviously, you have the Canadian border, where you can't have a player for 2 weeks, and all that stuff. That's going to complicate things this year. But we're going to take a look at the buyers, the neutral teams, and the sellers. Now, I'm going to leave up a board for you guys so you can see the buyers, the sellers, and the neutral teams. So we're going to start off with the buyers. So here you go. You've got your buyers. So, the buyers, we're going to head to the Central Division. First, you have the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning. No surprises here. The Florida Panthers are on a torrid pace right now, a historically good season for this franchise. The Panthers are finding a way to win hockey games. They're getting good goaltending finally, and they finally are scoring goals from their top guys like Huberdeau, Barkov. They're getting help from Wenberg. This is really good stuff from the Florida Panthers. I really hope it keeps up. Again, sustainability, we could find them as a neutral team in a couple weeks the next time we do this, but as of right now, the Florida Panthers, give them credit, they're doing pretty well. The Tampa Bay Lightning, they're going to always be a buyer. They might be a conservative buyer, though. Don't expect them to be making any huge moves, especially with the cap the way it is. It's going to be really hard for Tampa to make moves. But again, don't be surprised if they maybe try and acquire like a Blake Coleman-esque player with the first-round pick. They don't need draft picks right now, so they may be willing to trade their first-round pick. We'll see what happens, especially with the draft the way it's going to be this year. They don't even know how good that player could be, especially at 20. The value of that first-round pick is going to really be interesting this year. Now we're heading to the East Division, which we've got a decent amount of buyers. We have 3 buyers in the East Division: the Boston Bruins, the Philadelphia Flyers, and the New York Islanders. Now, the Boston Bruins are a team that I think, they're going to be a conservative buyer. They've got a little bit of cap space, but not really much. And they've got the team that they have. I could see them acquiring another guy in the bottom 6, maybe a left shot defenseman. Goaltending's pretty solid, so you don't have to worry about that. But Boston, for the most part, besides that left side defense, which is starting to sustain itself, that's really the only move I could really see the Bruins making. The Philadelphia Flyers. Guys, the Flyers are a buyer, and they don't really need help in any one category, really. They just, if you could add depth to your team, but they're kind of tough. I saw them as a buyer/neutral team, because you could see the Flyers going on a real run right now. They have a window with Alain Vigneault, with Carter Hart playing the way he has for the most part. He struggled for the most part this year, but as a team, the Flyers are in a window right now where Claude Giroux is still pretty good, Jacob Voracek, those guys continue to dwindle down, but you've got Kevin Hayes, Joel Farabee coming onto the scene. So there are signs of life for the Flyers. I could see them being buyers at the trade deadline. Staying in the East Division, you have the New York Islanders. The Islanders need scoring, need scoring, need scoring, need scoring. Did I mention that the New York Islanders need some goal scoring? Guys, the Islanders need a goal scorer. I don't know where they're going to get it from, but they got to figure it out. This has been a big issue for the Islanders. Do they maybe pick up Bobby Ryan from Detroit at some point? He's a cheaper option, a one-year deal. Maybe they look to a guy like Bobby Ryan, who has had pretty nice success, especially in the beginning of the season with the Detroit Red Wings. The St. Louis Blues are a buyer as we head to the Honda West Division. The St. Louis Blues, they're, again, talk about an interesting team. I don't really know how I feel about them. Do they need a backup? I feel like Husso was played okay, right? So, the St. Louis Blues, I could see them staying for the most part, staying put. But if they want to add another bottom six guy or maybe another defenseman, they could absolutely do that. The Vegas Golden Knights as well. Again, talk about another team that doesn't need to be a buyer, but will probably make themselves a buyer. That's Vegas. Vegas will be in the conversation, I think, to acquire more players. Why not? If you can, why not? They don't need the draft picks. So it comes down to if they have the cap space. And that's going to be a problem for these teams, especially like Vegas, St. Louis, Boston, Tampa. Those are the kind of scenarios we're looking at. Colorado, they are the exception to that. They have a lot of cap space. And if Buffalo decides not to keep Taylor Hall, then they maybe look to bring in a guy like Taylor Hall. Again, now we've been hearing contract extension talk with the Sabres, so that may not happen, but I think it's quite interesting with where Colorado is at. They have tons of cap space, and they could use, why not, add a couple more forwards, defensemen, why not, right? Okay, so now moving to the North Division, where we've got 4 teams that I have considered buyers. Toronto, we know, Toronto, they could use another defenseman maybe. Another goaltender because Jack Campbell's been out with injury. He should be coming back soon, but again, stability, we're talking about that. Forward depth in the bottom 6. They just picked up Alex Galchenyuk, another body. So obviously they're looking to move pieces around in the bottom 6, and maybe they find a way to make that work. They could bring somebody else in. Montreal, I think Montreal could be a team that's a buyer. They've got a little bit of cap space. The Molson, obviously the Molson connection obviously helps out the Habs. I think they're going to spend to the cap, and if Mark Bergevin finds a deal that he could pick up another defenseman or potentially another forward winger, how do you say no to that, right? The Edmonton Oilers need help everywhere. If they could pick up another defenseman, a goaltender, or another depth forward, that would be huge. We're seeing Tyler Ennis, Puyarvi, Kailer Yamamoto do pretty well on the wing, so I really think defense is a big thing for the Oilers. If they could address that issue, maybe bring in another third goaltender, a strong, reliable third goaltender. I don't know how good they feel about Stuart Skinner right now, so I think that's part of the issue. But there you go with the Oilers. Calgary, again, another team. They're pretty solid overall. They got decent goaltending. Maybe add another defenseman, which I think could help a team like Calgary. Just to lower some of the minutes for guys like Giordano, Husso Velimaki, Rasmus Anderson. They are playing an awful lot for the Flames. So maybe just to neutralize that a little bit, maybe add another depth defenseman. So that is our buyers for the trade deadline quarter mark of the NHL season. Now we're going to teams that I believe will be neutral. We're just going to fly through this. We've got Chicago. I think they're going to become, I think most people expected them to be a seller at this point, but they've played pretty well and deserve to be in that conversation. Carolina, they did make the Cedric Paquette move, which tells me they're making moves here early, but they aren't really maybe looking to make that many moves. They kind of like the team they have. They have really good defense. Could they consider adding a goaltender if one is available? That may be something to look at. But overall, I think Carolina is going to stay pretty neutral, as well as Chicago. Columbus, again, they're where they are in the standings. It's too early to decide where I believe Columbus will be, if they're a buyer or a seller. I think they realize they have a little bit of a window here. But again, they're still in that retool rebuild. So, it may be just stay put, maybe acquire a couple more draft picks before the trade deadline. But as of that, I don't know. Columbus is in the middle for me. And another team that's in the middle, Dallas, I thought they would have been a buyer just a couple weeks ago, a hardcore buyer. But since then, they've really fallen off over the past couple weeks on a 5-game losing skid. Dallas has struggled, so it puts them more in the middle ground. Obviously, when Tyler Seguin and Ben Bishop come back, that's obviously going to help their lineup. But as of right now, they're in the middle for me. Nothing, I don't think they should be buying, and I really don't think they should be selling either. Washington cap space. I think that's a big thing for the Capitals. They are low on cap space, and I don't know what they're necessarily gonna try and fix. Samsonov, maybe do they want another goaltender if Samsonov isn't ready to go? I think he's on a conditioning stint. He'll come back to Washington. Obviously, I think that's the plan at least. But then you still have, some maybe defensive issues. Maybe add another defenseman in Washington. I think Justin Schultz helped that equation, but if they could add another depth defenseman, I think that would be huge for a team like Washington. Pittsburgh, I think we're going to see Brian Burke and Ron Hextall be pretty quiet at this year's trade deadline. I think it's going to be in the offseason. Once they figure out if this team makes the playoffs or not, that's when we're going to see them make moves. So I could expect them to be very quiet at this year's trade deadline, and then going into next year, we'll see them be a little bit more active. New Jersey, they were supposed to be a seller, right? But they've actually played pretty well. They kind of bounced back from last season. They've had some COVID issues, so we haven't seen a ton of Devils action recently. But I think Tommy Fitzgerald could see them being a potential, just a conservative buyer because they don't want to trade their futures away because they are continuing the rebuild. But they see if they are in a potential playoff spot in that East Division with teams like the Rangers and Buffalo down, potentially even Pittsburgh, there is a window here where it could be the Islanders and New Jersey fighting out for that final playoff spot. So we'll see what happens with the Devils. The New York Rangers are going to continue the rebuild. They're going to stay neutral, I think, because what are they necessarily going to sell? They don't have a ton of big guys to sell, so I don't think the Rangers are going to move much. Maybe they move some depth guys at best, but we're not going to see any crazy moves from the New York Rangers. Again, you just re-signed Chris Kreider. He's not going anywhere. Do you consider trading Zibanejad? Do you consider they have the Tony DeAngelo thing. Maybe DeAngelo gets traded. Do you try and trade Jacob Trouba? Or is that an off-season thing? Those are the kind of questions we could see the New York Rangers answer, but I don't think it's urgent. I think that's something we'll see in the off-season next year, so not necessarily a trade deadline seller. The Arizona Coyotes, very concerned about the Coyotes, obviously with everything that's gone on in their PR, with their ownership the last week. Not a great look for the Arizona Coyotes. But again, this is a team that they're in a tough spot. That's just how it goes. But like I said, I think the Arizona Coyotes, they're kind of intriguing to me. But I don't think they're going to be buyers. I just don't think they have the team to be buyers this year. But again, that could easily change halfway through the season. They play well. We could see this team become a buyer. But as of right now, I think they're going to stay fairly neutral. Considering where they are with cap space, that they're toward the ceiling for cap space. We'll see what happens there with the Yotes. Minnesota, they had a good start to the season, have fallen off a lot, so I don't know how you feel about the Wild. I don't think they get in the postseason this year, but maybe they go on another run again and they keep things interesting. But like I said, I think they're staying neutral for now. Winnipeg, they already made their big move, picking up Dubois. What else do you want them to do? Do you want them to bring in another defenseman? Maybe if that's an option on the table, but how many defensemen are going to be available at this year's deadline? That may make things more difficult. So I could see Winnipeg being a conservative buyer or a neutral team at this point. So that is it for our neutral teams. And the good news, guys, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 potential sellers at this year's deadline. Nashville's the big one because it seems like they could be going off. Matt Duchene could be available. Philip Forsberg could be available. Could we potentially see like an Eli Tolvanen get traded? Dante Fabro could be traded. UC Saros could be traded. Everybody is on the table except Roman Josi and Pekka Rinne because of their no movement clauses. This is going to be interesting for Nashville. I'm going to have to do an entire video on the Predators. There could be a lot of change in Nashville over the next couple months. David Poile might blow things up. Ryan Ellis. I mean, there could be a lot of guys moved in Nashville. So we'll see what happens with that. Matthias Ekholm, right? All right, so Detroit. Yeah, Detroit's going to be a seller. Detroit has played well recently, but they're going to be a seller. They're going to continue to build up their prospect pool. get more draft picks, and continue the process. That's what Steve Eisman has been harping on since the beginning. Hopefully they get a top 2 draft pick this year, not 4 again. We'll see what happens though. But I think the Detroit Red Wings have a real shot at doing something. But again, we'll see what kind of move they make, because who are they going to trade? They're not trading Dylan Larkin, right? So, there could be an Anthony Mantha discussion, Danny DeKeyser. We've heard those guys in the rumor mill, but again, how much value are they going to have right now at this point? Buffalo. Yeah, Buffalo. Taylor Hall. Taylor Hall seems to be the big name. If he doesn't stay in Buffalo and sign a long-term deal over the next couple weeks, we could see him on the block. Do they look at even trading a guy like Carter Hutton, who is backing up Linus Ullmark? Do they look to do that? Do they look at another Rasmus Ristolainen potential trade? There are some questions in Buffalo that could be answered. But again, the way they're playing right now, I've been saying the word lethargic for Buffalo. We could easily see them become a seller by the trade deadline. The Los Angeles Kings, continuing the process, kind of like Detroit. They're in a rebuild right now. They have young guys like Quentin Byfield, Alex Turcotte, down in the American League and playing quite well. So we'll see what happens. They're going to continue the process. Don't be surprised if we hear the Jonathan Quick trade rumors come out, especially with him playing as well as he has over the past couple of games, more recently so. So don't be surprised if we see a quickie potential trade with Jonathan Quick if those rumors start to come out. The Anaheim Ducks are an interesting team, because talk about goaltending potential in terms of the trade market. John Gibson could be on the block. And this disappoints me as a Ducks fan, because I really like John Gibson. But if the Ducks want to continue continuing the rebuild, John Gibson, I believe, is 26 or 27. Can't believe he's that old already. But this is a big decision for the Ducks. This is Bob Murray. He has to really sit down and say, are we going to be good in the window of John Gibson? Because if he becomes 30 and they start becoming good, that could still work. The Ducks still have a lot of futures with John Gibson. They could go a 5 or 6 or 7 year run with Gibson if they're a good team again in 3 years. So, I don't know. It's one of those things where the Ducks got to make that decision, and it's kind of a touchy subject with John Gibson. But it seems like they are likely looked at as sellers across the rest of the league, so they're a seller. This one I think is interesting. The San Jose Sharks. Now, they haven't had a great start to the season, but they've recently been turning things around the past week or two. So the Sharks, I think, will be sellers at the end of the day, but they are a team that is going to more likely be a neutral team instead of a seller. So they're on the line of neutral and seller, in my opinion. I really like what we've seen from San Jose over the past couple weeks, but again, that team continues to get older. They don't have a lot of draft picks. This could become a theme here for San Jose. So their window is now in San Jose, but it doesn't really look like it because of where they are in the standings, which is, quite frankly, out of the playoffs. Vancouver and Ottawa, I'm going to lump them into one category. They are absolute sellers, especially in that North Division, with teams running away with that division. They're kind of out of the chase already. Vancouver and Ottawa are really, really, really in trouble. I don't see them making the postseason. They're going to be sellers. And I don't know what Vancouver is going to really sell. Is it Jake Virtanen, Edler, maybe Holtby? How much are you really going to sell in Vancouver? Ottawa, same thing. They've already traded most of their guys away. Who are you going to trade away at this point? So I think they're going to be soft sellers, maybe depth guys. Like we already saw them trading a guy like Galchenyuk away. Do they maybe flip Dzingel by the end of the season because he becomes a UFA? These are the things that we could see Ottawa do at some point. And the same thing for Vancouver. So that is it. Guys, I'll show you a quick board. So we've got our buyers, we've got our sellers, and then we have our neutral teams. So guys, that is it. Let me know in the comment section down below. Do you agree with my buyers and sellers and neutral teams so far this season? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you guys like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL, you guys know what to do. Make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and even bigger subscribe down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks for our second Buyers and Sellers.